Well, we have made it to the third and final part of my 2014 college football OU preview. Talking about the Sooners' schedule, and also, too, we're going to talk about my prediction and what I think will happen with this college football 14 playoff, the 4 teams that will be represented. Coming soon, it'll be that season opener for the Sooners. It's getting closer, okay? August 30th, hosting Louisiana Tech. Sooners already a pretty high favorite to win this game. You know, the line was 35 at this point last week. It's now up to 38, and there's a reason. Louisiana Tech's defense, they suck. They're bad. Offense should have a little bit of success. Not too long ago, Sonny Dykes, who's not in California, he coached there, and I believe they were number 1 in the country when it came to like total points or total yardage or both. But of course, that was against a bunch of nobodies. Of course, OU, they're a somebody, and La Tech, like I said, will have some offensive success, but it's unlikely that Louisiana Tech's going to be able to stay within 4 touchdowns of these guys at best case scenario. Look for the Sooners to roll, and if you're really looking at this thing with the glass half full, hopefully you can get the backups in the game as early as possible, get this some quality playing time, and more importantly, or just as importantly, you can get players like Trevor Knight, Sterling Shepard, Tapper, and Stryker, and those guys out of the game early and get them rested and get them ready for Tulsa. Speaking of Tulsa, Golden Hurricane, that's the next game on the schedule, the only non-conference game of the 3 that's on the road. But remember, Sooners do not leave the Sooner State. In fact, there's going to be a lot of OU fans at that game, even though I already know that the average ticket price for a Tulsa home game is like $10 or $15. This game, they've jacked those prices up to over $100. Doesn't matter, okay? The Sooners will still have a lot of crimson and cream in the stands. Last year, OU had their way with the Sooners. It was like a career day for Blake Bell. It was just a mismatch. Tulsa, by the way, did win their season opener in overtime last night on Thursday, the 28th. But still, the team that Tulsa played will be like boys compared to OU, which will be men. And I expect the men of the Sooners to win and win comfortably in this one at T-Town. Then the next week, you play an SEC opponent, Tennessee, on September the 13th. This will be a night game. And look, next year when these guys play in Knoxville, that's going to be a heck of a game because then Tennessee will have most of their talent back. Butch Jones has gotten terrific talent at UT. A lot of it's young. The offensive line, they're practically new for the Volunteers. Like I said, the talent's there, but the experience is not pretty much on most of this squad. This is a team for the future, but not the near future. Sooners should be able to handle Tennessee this season, but again, next year, get back with me. That looks like a better contest. September the 20th, Big 12 opener. You got to go to Morgantown to play West Virginia, and is the hot seat on Dana Holgorsen or what? After the 4-8 campaign, this team has really not hit expectations since joining the Big 12. It's been a nightmare for them. The only real good thing you can say about West Virginia when it comes to playing Oklahoma, they play them tough. Traditionally, they play them tough. Going back to the Jeff Hostetler era when they came to OU and won. And, of course, we know what happened with Schmidt, that fullback that might still be running at the Fiesta Bowl to this day, as West Virginia had well over 350 yards rushing against the Sooners back in 2007 in the Fiesta Bowl. Just a bad game defensively for the Sooners against that group. But West Virginia's not even close to being that talent. But they have, since joining the Big 12, never lost to Oklahoma by a double-digit margin. They've kept it within single digits, and last year was a low-scoring game. I expect OU to score more than 16 points in this one and get the victory. And for Trevor Knight, maybe a personal game of redemption because he was just awful in that game last year against the Mountaineers. Then you play the other team that just recently joined the Big 12 2 weeks later. You get the bye week, September 27th. Then October, it gets juicing with the schedule because you go to Fort Worth to play TCU, another team that the Sooners have not beaten by a double-digit margin in Big 12 play. In fact, last year it was only a 3-point margin. The Horned Frogs were stingy, especially in that second half. Their defense is terrific. Their offense is a whole nother story. They could be going with Jokel, the former A&M quarterback, in that game. Boykin has not been anything special at TCU. I still expect OU to win, but they can't overlook Texas, which is the following week. And basically, conversely, Texas can't overlook Baylor because that's who the Longhorns play that same day that OU plays TCU. Then we get to October 11th and the Red River rivalry, the showdown between the Sooners and the Longhorns. You know what happened last year? Sooners were an 11-point favorite, undefeated. Texas was not having a good season. Had already lost 2, had given up over 500 rushing yards to BYU. They lost to Mississippi by having a horrible second half. So how did Texas beat Oklahoma? They just simply took it to them. As Eugene Robinson once said, they busted them in the mouth, and that's what happened that day in Dallas. OU never knew what hit him. So if there was ever a revenge game, this would be the one between the Sooners and Longhorns in the debut of new Texas head coach Charlie Strong. It's going to seem weird not seeing Matt Brown on the sideline for a Red River rivalry game with the Cotton Bowl. You only get a week to get ready for Kansas State, a serious Big 12 contender. That's on October the 18th, the week after Texas. Last time K-State came to Norman, they won in Norman for the first time in the Bill Snyder era. The second era, that is. You're looking at a K-State team that will run the zone read. They'll be tough. Tyler Lockett, he's a speedster. He can kill you on special teams. He's killed a lot of teams on special teams. Could be All-American at wide receiver. We'll see how he does, and we'll see how the Waters kid does at QB as he got stronger as the year went last year. Of course, a year ago, Sooners were an underdog at Kansas State, and it turned out to be really the first big game that Trevor Knight had from start to finish. So Kansas State, Texas, you get them back-to-back. That, to me, looks like the roughest part of the schedule. And then after that, you go to Iowa State. You get 2 weeks to get ready for the Cyclones. Should be a cakewalk. Iowa State last season only won 3 ball games. So talk about maybe a little pressure on their head coach. We'll see how Paul Rhodes handles the Sooners. Oklahoma has not lost to Iowa State in the Bob Stoops era. Then probably the team that could really cause havoc to OU's home schedule. Toughest home game of the year, defending Big 12 champion Baylor. Bryce Petty, no question, the best quarterback in the Big 12. He's back. He had just absolute ridiculous numbers a year ago. Thing that works in Oklahoma's favor, Baylor, despite their recent greatness, has not been a terrific road team. In Waco, they'll kick your butt. Away from Waco, you never know what's going to happen. Sooners have never lost to Baylor in Norman. I said ever, okay, ever. There was an overtime game not very long ago, but the Sooners pulled it out. They've never lost to Baylor in Norman. So take that to the bank. The game that I think could give OU the biggest fits is in Lubbock against Texas Tech. Last season, Cliff Kingsbury, his Red Raider debut as head coach, and they played OU tooth and nail in Norman. Sooners won that game by a mere 8 points. It's a heck of a game, but Tech gave OU all they wanted, and that was when Tech was undefeated at one point in 10th in the country. Playing in Lubbock, I know 2 years ago, that game was one that which the Sooners finally broke, the Lubbock jinx and finally played well in Lubbock. But that game was in broad daylight. I'd be willing to bet you that they'll probably move that game tonight. And Lubbock at nighttime is absolutely crazy. And I'm not one person that likes to pick on officials or homers or anything like that. But trying to win in Lubbock, good luck on getting a fair and impartial game called there. Probably won't happen. So the Sooners better be ready to play Texas Tech. Then your final 2 games, you host Kansas. Kansas finally appears on the schedule. They're not after the Texas game. This time they're near the end of the year, November 22nd. And then 2 weeks to prepare for Bedlam against Oklahoma State. Sooners historically and recently have had their way in this rivalry. It's one of the most lopsided state rivalries you'll ever find. Of course, Mike Gundy and the squad, kind of inexperienced this year. But don't think for 1 second that you can rest on Oklahoma State. You get them, of course, at the end of the year like you do always. They should have a better idea of what kind of team they are by then. Who knows if J.W. Walsh will still be the quarterback. Cowboys, all you have to do is say one thing, 2001. Sooners might have played for a national championship that year if Rashawn Woods, Josh Fields, and company hadn't pulled off that stunner, and OSU was no good at all that year. So in Bedlam, gloves are going to be off, anything can happen, and that is going to be on December 6th. I think best case, OU runs the table. It's that simple. They're the most talented team in the Big 12. They should not lose a game outside of conference. If there is, maybe there should be an investigation. Worst case, it could go 7-5. Trevor Knight goes down. You got a decision to make. You play, Blake Bell, move him from tight end back to QB, or do you give one of the new guys a shot that's never, played a collegiate snap before? That's a big question you have to ask yourself right there. And if the defense runs into As a matter of fact, this is where the overall prediction comes in. It's not going to make every Sooner fan happy. I do think they're going to lose one game. It won't be to Tennessee. It won't be to Texas. It won't be to K-State. It won't be to Baylor. It won't even be to Oklahoma State. That game in Lubbock worries me more than any other, just because of how tough Texas Tech played them last year. And that offense, this is going to be the fastest group of receivers the Red Raiders have ever had. It's the week after the Baylor game, so the placement of that game is a little bit funny. And you don't want this game to come down to officiating either. I think it'll be a heck of a game, but I think Tech gets them. And I think the Sooners go 11-1. Now the $64,000 question: does OU get into the playoff? Before this injury to Braxton Miller of Ohio State, I would have said no, because I would have said Ohio State runs the table. I've got Oregon going, I got Florida State going, I got Alabama going. So I think Ohio State probably still wins the Big Ten, even without Braxton Miller. They're so deep in other positions, and who knows about their quarterback. He won't be as good as Braxton Miller, but maybe he'll do a decent job. I think Ohio State goes 12-1 and wins the Big Ten. So it come down to Ohio State and OU. One of those teams is going to get left out. I think Ohio State will get the bid because of the fact that the Big 12 doesn't have a conference title game, and because of the fact that I think Ohio State loses a game, and I don't think it'll be to Michigan State. I think a lot of people are jumping on that game saying Michigan State's going to win because Braxton Miller ain't back. That's one of those dangerous things where everybody's picking one side. I think Ohio State pulls it off. I think they do lose a game somewhere. Bottom line is I think OU gets left out of the party. I don't think their conference strength of schedule is going to hold up. It's not very good. Tennessee's going to lose their fair share of games this year, and Tulsa and Louisiana Tech's not going to impress the committee at all. Sooners will go to a major bowl game, but I think they get left out of the party unless they go undefeated. If they do, that's a whole other conversation. I'm hoping that they do, but my mind says that they'll lose one game because it seems like, as great as they've been over the years, there's always that one game or two that gets them that hardly anybody foresees. That happened last year, of course, against Texas. That's my look at the Sooners. Hopefully they'll prove me wrong, go undefeated. But on these picks, I try to use this, not try to use that. Thanks, everybody.